This is Too Many Lawyers. I'm Royal Oaks, your host, but this is a special edition of the Too Many Lawyers show because it's the launch of a brand new version. It's called Royal Oaks Talks Law with ... And Jim Moret is the ... today. Jim, we are so delighted to have you on the program. Thank you for coming in.
I've been a hyphenate before, but never a ...
Well, this is a new experience for you. You need no introduction. So let's get right to the cut. No, to be on the safe side, let's do a quick one, okay?
Sure.
So Jim Moret is chief correspondent for the nationally syndicated magazine show Inside Edition. Some 5 million people a day tune in. And I got to ask you, that's a lot of people. Do you ever freeze up like Mitch McConnell and just think, oh, crap, 5 million people are watching me?
Only at home.
Yeah,
Actually,
okay.
No, I'll tell you where our big viewership is on YouTube, oddly enough.
Really?
We have about 13 million subscribers on YouTube. And here's the interesting thing. It's a totally different audience, very young, probably 10 years old to 25 years old. And they have no idea we're a TV show. And I'm not kidding.
Isn't that something? It's a brave new world.
It's
so
a brave new world.
If we know that about 5 million watch every night on regular TV, do you have a guesstimate as to how many? You said 13 million, but that's...
We have some of our stories get 1 million views.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Well, we're moving to the streaming world. And by the way, we're also joined by our executive producer, Christian Bladt. Christian, welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, my gosh. Happy to be here. Nice to see you, Royal. Nice to see you, Jim.
And Blattcast is where you can see Christian. He does a fabulous podcast. So check out Blattcast. So,
Christian, have you been to these studios before?
This is the first time I've been to this studio.
My first time, too. And an interesting thing about Royal, he's a lawyer, as am I, but Royal chose a studio that is more difficult to find than somebody in the witness protection program. So I just wanted to put that out there. So.
It was a challenge, but you feel good about overcoming all of the steps to get here.
I feel like Magellan.
Yeah, it was actually a lot easier to find Henry Hill's sauce recipe than to find this place.
I love it. All right, so when it comes to broadcast journalism, Jim Moret has done it all. Reporter, anchor, analyst for the ABC and CBS TV outlets in Los Angeles. And then you hosted a national entertainment show on Fox News. Were you like the Doogie Howser of national anchors? You must have been 15 when you did that.
Well, I'm pretty old.
No, I don't think so.
Old, yes.
How'd that happen? Most people, they get into TV news,
right.
And we'll get into the story of how you did that, but then they move, from Little Rock to Denver to Chicago to New York. How did you move from...
I started in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
but I started as a lawyer on the air.
Right.
That's how I started.
Yeah.
I didn't start as a reporter. I started as there were no lawyers on the air. This was it was a wonderful time in television. There were no lawyers on the air.
What do you mean? I don't understand. How could it be a wonderful time on TV if no lawyers were on the
It was
air?
a blessed time. Yeah. People watched TV because they liked it.
Well, the reason I know a lot about your background, other than the fact that we've palled around on the radio for a long time, is I've read your amazing book that I'm holding up right now. It's called The Last Day of My Life. It is available on Amazon. And so you give your whole backstory there. But, yeah, so your wife was working at Channel 7, KBC here in L.A. She's selling airtime. And you decided to march in and talk to the news director about getting on the air. How'd that happen?
I actually approached the general manager.
Oh, you went right to the top.
Right to the top. And said, you need a lawyer to tell people what their rights are in kind of cocktail law.
And again, this was before it existed.
It was 1983.
Yeah, before Harvey Levin was born.
Before Harvey was born, yes, that's true. And so they put me on an afternoon show giving people legal advice once a week, and I was horrible. I was so bad. But
I'm sure you're being hard on yourself.
No, really, I was bad. I was 26, 25 years old, something like that. I was 25. And
what do you say to all of the people, millions of them really, who have struggled for their entire lives to work their way up to a major market after staying in like 8 or 9 smaller markets, and the people who say, screw you, Jim Moret, what do you say to those folks?
Well, most people today have the last laugh because you don't need to be on any station.
That's
you
true.
could be in your living room and be on TikTok, probably making substantially more money, and be an influencer.
If you're good at makeup, I guess. So then you moved to CNN. You anchored multiple shows. You were CNN's chief anchor for the O.J. trial in the 90s.
Right.
Early 2000s, you joined Inside Edition. And 15 years ago, you wrote this wonderful memoir, The Last Day of My Life, an amazing life story. Before we get into more of your backstory, I want to get your take, since you are a lawyer and you are a reporter for Inside Edition, on some of the top stories that are hitting the news. Supreme Court and politics, I don't know what your take is, but it's just kind of weird to me that the U.S. Supreme Court is just so intimately involved in these deeply political things. I mean, I know they're allergic to being perceived as political. In this recent decision, Amy Coney Barrett weighed in on the whole insurrection deal, where they said, yeah, Trump can stay on the Colorado ballot. And she had a one-page concurrence, and the thrust of it was, we are not political animals, okay? We've got to lower the political temperature of the United States, which sounds reasonable, but is it weird to you that a Supreme Court is so hip deep in this stuff?
It sounds disingenuous to have said that, by the way, because I think they are political. The fact that they've deferred one of their decisions on immunity until April is political in the sense that most legal analysts, most legal observers know how that ruling should come down. You don't need 2 months to prepare legal arguments for a case that shouldn't even be before the court. The perception is the court is terribly partisan, terribly political. And as a lawyer, it's upsetting because I always viewed the rule of law as something sacred. And I don't necessarily believe that that's true anymore. I don't have faith in the court as I once did. I'm not to say I'm an insurrectionist. I'm not. I still want to believe in the rule of law. I just don't have faith necessarily in this court the way I wanted to and thought I would.
Well, I think they're really sensitive to it. They are political animals. I mean, when you think about it, the most political creatures on the planet appoint all of the Supreme Court justices, namely presidents. So it's kind of inevitable. Every once in a while.
But they've always been above that. At least pretended to be above that. Now they're just pretending. I don't know what they're pretending anymore. But what are your feelings? You're a lawyer. You hold this dear to you, right?
My feeling is based on the comment I just made a second ago, namely, I kind of expect people to be political, because if you look at virtually all of the high-profile legal cases, and you ask yourself, well, how are judges going to rule? And not just trial judges, but Court of Appeal judges in the federal system and the U.S. Supreme Court. It's kind of easy to predict. The liberals vote the way the president that appointed them would want them to vote, and the conservatives vote the same way. So, I mean, they've got all these highfalutin rationales and three-part tests and so on. But at the end of the day, it's all pretty discretionary. And I guess I've just come to expect that they are political, and it's sad. But, David Souter disappointed Bush. He turned into a big liberal, and the Republicans have hated him ever since. But that's the outlier. Most all of them are consistent.
What about precedent? What about stare decisis? What about the idea that once a ruling is set, that ruling does?
Well, you're right. And Dobbs, the abortion issue, is the prime example of that. I mean, to turn your back on that, the court has paid a huge price. The public opinion polls used to say that 75% of Americans think the Supreme Court is a good, honest institution. Now it's 40%. And I think it's because of a series of cases like that where they've kind of turned their back on it. Let me back up a second, Jim. You mentioned you're a lawyer. So how in the world could you pass up the glory and the excitement of being a litigator and instead work in television?
I still have a future. I'm not going to keep this job forever, One day I'll get there, they'll say, you're over. You're canceled.
You would have been great at it. You would have been a tremendous trial lawyer. Can you imagine, Christian, can you imagine this guy smiling
I'm too shy.
At the ladies in the jury? So what did you say when you started out practicing? I assume it was litigation, not filling out tax forms.
No, it was primarily contracts. And
well, see, that's the problem.
That was the problem.
I should have been
a litigator.
Oh, yeah. You would have been a fabulous trial lawyer, but not nearly as exciting as your life. And, well, we call you television's Jim Moret. Do you resent that?
No, that's actually what my wife calls me.
I love it.
I met Jim in person right outside the studio for the first time, and he said, "Hi, I'm television's Jim Moret."
I said, no. I said TV's Jim Moret.
You know what? You're right. He did say.
I was more because I was trying to be more informal.
And I think you mentioned to me, Christian, that you were just kicking yourself because you forgot your autograph book.
I did, yeah.
Do they still have? When I was 8 or 9, I had an autograph book, and it's still in the garage, by the way.
When you were 8 or 9, don't you remember what would happen at the end of the school year? You take that around, your yearbook, or
the yearbook, yeah. But I had an actual autograph book, like a little leather-bound thing, about 10 inches by 5 inches.
That's when talkies came in.
Yeah,
Well,
I was
I got-
going to ask, did you get Fatty Arbuckle to
He
sign
did.
your
Will
autograph
Wilson,
book?
yeah.
He had Woodrow.
I got Fatty Arbuckle, but after the legal trouble, I tore his page out
probably a good
because,
idea.
Virginia, we won't get into the details. State of the Union address. I want to find out from you guys if you had the same reaction I did. I don't know if you saw much of it. I watched the whole damn thing.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought of Bye Bye Birdie. So in the early 60s,
really?
in the
You
early
did?
60s, Dick Van Dyke and Janet Leigh starred, and the plot was he was a chemist. He invented some drug that would speed people up and it would be more efficient. And so in order to get his song, he was a songwriter, played on Ed Sullivan after Conrad Birdie or before, he had to speed up the conductor, and the guy looked exactly in that movie like Joe Biden. Have you ever seen Mr. Biden speak as quickly as during that speech?
Funny story.
Okay.
And I really thought you were kidding at first when you mentioned Bye Bye Birdie, because in high
I
school,
love 60-year-old references.
in high school,
I like Dennis Miller.
I was Conrad Birdie in my high school play.
Oh, were you?
Yes.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. And that's why I thought, where's he going with this? Bye
Does he
Bye
have a
Birdie
clip?
reference. Is there a reference to Dick Van Dyke? And so
I love it.
you know what? I thought Joe Biden did an excellent job.
Oh, he was fabulous. He even mixed it up with the hecklers.
Absolutely.
He totally turned around the whole issue. Now, then the next day, the Republicans gleefully pointed out, he messed up again. But that was how many millions? It was
30.
Yeah, 30 million people saw him do great.
Right.
So
He wasn't the doddering fool that he was.
no, but he's got to keep it going, because if he
But he didn't leave
stumbles
right
again,
away. He didn't leave right away. What did he do?
a long time.
He stayed in that room. He said hello for another 45 minutes to an hour. He wasn't tired.
That's
He
true.
wasn't confused.
That's true. Next topic. You guys got to help me with this. RFK Jr. is thinking about appointing Jesse Ventura
Yes.
or Aaron Rodgers as
Correct.
vice president. What kind of a weirdo world are we living in?
Well, let me speak to RFK Jr. for a second. He's very outspoken about some of his friends that he's had in the past. He's very honest when he's asked these questions. He doesn't dodge them. He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I heard a quote where he said, O.J. Simpson's been to my house. Bill Cosby's been to my house.
Ooh.
So these are probably the best people that he knows. Jesse and Aaron Rodgers are probably the only people that he could possibly run
funny.
with that he's actually met. But, if he wanted to try and get Bill Cosby on his ticket. But he knows a lot of people, and I think that these are the two most normal for RFK.
Amazing. Well, we got to pause for a minute, but I will say that now that you've mentioned that, when we come back, I think we should kick around the possibility that RFK Jr. will go for OJ as the VP, because he was found not guilty of murder. And he's a very famous guy. And when we do return, I want your impressions, Jim, of the whole OJ experience in the 90s. We'll be right back on Too Many Lawyers. Special edition, Royal Oaks Talks Law with Jim Moret. Welcome back. This is Too Many Lawyers, and we're talking with Jim Moret and our executive producer, Christian Bladt. So before we get to your comments on OJ, Jim, I have to say, not only did I read the book, but I'm so proud to say that Jim, you took time to actually write a little dedication to me. And it says, for Royal, you just put $7 in my pocket, you sucker. Affectionately, James Moret.
I used James. It was
I
very
could.
formal.
That seemed a little formal.
It was a little formal. I didn't know you as well then.
Okay, so I'm going to accept that as an excuse. So you were the chief anchor for the CNN coverage of the O.J. Simpson trial.
Yes.
You did a bunch of other stuff for CNN that I want to talk about in a minute. But
Nothing more important, though.
well,
Nothing
it was a
more
pretty big deal.
interesting. Nothing more riveting.
I don't know what your guys' reaction was, but I could not believe how the national attention span stretched. I mean, I was doing some talk shows, and you turn the microphone on, and 3 hours later, it had been nothing but 3 hours of OJ calls.
Right.
What's your impression of the whole weird, bizarre national obsession? And Did you ever think that O.J. would just be walking around still looking for the real killer?
You know, you have to look back on that time. It was before social media. It was before the internet, really.
It was right about, I think the internet was 93 or 94.
We had a chat.
Famous clip with Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric
Yeah.
on the Today Show, and he's saying, well, Katie, what's this internet thing they're talking about?
We had a chat room on, I'm trying to think if it was CompuServe or AOL, and I had to go to the LA bureau to use it because there was a moderator. I didn't know. It was a wonderful time, to be quite honest with you. There was cable news.
All right.
CNN and Core TV were the only two networks running gavel-to-gavel coverage. My job from, say, 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon was sitting in front of a camera with two legal analysts, Greta Van Susteren and Roger Cossack, and kind of shepherding the coverage. And it was all-consuming. It was my entire life. But I had 2 young kids at the time, and never once did I tell them what I thought of guilt or innocence. I played that close to the vest.
Yeah, you got to play down in the middle.
Right. Those are the good old days before you should have an opinion.
Right.
Now I'll tell you what I think. But
So did you expect, as most people did, I think, that he would be convicted, or did you?
No, I wasn't.
Oh,
I wasn't.
Okay. Why did you think he would walk?
I thought that the prosecution outsmarted themselves along the way because they cared more about what the defense was going to do and kind of made their decisions based on what they thought was going to happen in response. They took far too long to explain things.
I remember that. Marcia Clark put on like a 2-week junior college biology class on DNA.
It was 4 weeks.
Was it 4 weeks?
Yeah.
And I mean, how stupid is that? I mean,
It was horrible.
You can do it in an hour or two with charts and nice, reasonable words that people understand. Why? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. Robert Shapiro was one of the defense attorneys, and his best work in that trial was a cross-examination of, I believe it was, I'm trying to think who it was. Well, I know what it was. It was the pathologist.
oh, right, right.
Now, the jurors had been forced to look at life-size, actually poster-size pictures of the autopsy.
Yeah.
And and unfortunately, I saw those pictures as well, along with a number of other reporters who were brought into the courtroom after hours. And they were facing those photos for about 7 or 8 days. Robert Shapiro got up and did the cross-exam in 40 minutes. So the jury knew you didn't need 7 days to put on that part of the case if the cross is only 40 minutes. And they felt like the prosecution lied to them, I believe, that they were trying to sell them a bill of goods that for whatever reason wasn't true. And look, if you ask, do I think O.J. Simpson did it? Yes, of course I do. But that's because I looked at all of the evidence and it's based on that, not based upon what happened in the courtroom.
Yeah, and there's that wonderful expression. I don't know who coined it, but they framed a guilty man.
Yes.
And it's not hard to imagine that a racist like Mark Furman, who's on tape talking to that North Carolina screenwriter using the N-word left and right, it's not surprising that a jury would say, well, he's a damned racist, he's a liar, but of course that meant they would ignore all the other evidence. So it's something. When we come back, Christian's going to tell us about what O.J.'s up to right now. Stick with us on Too Many Lawyers. Welcome back. This is Too Many Lawyers, special edition. Royal Oaks Talks with Jim Moret about the law. Christian, before we get your comments about O.J. Simpson, I have to say at the end of the episode, we're going to play a couple of games. You know how Jimmy Fallon loves to play games? Well, we're going to play a couple of games. One is my absolute favorites.
Twister?
It was not Naked Twister. Oh. that would improve the ratings.
And then a pie eating
not if I
contest
participate.
that works really well on the radio.
That's right. And the other game is the either or game. So those are fun games that we're going to play. And you don't know what I'm talking about, but that makes it fun. So we were talking about O.J. Simpson. And Christian, I did not know this. I've tried to follow the Juice's post-killing career. But he's an analyst?
Yeah, so he's built up something for himself on what was Twitter and is now X. He has a huge following, and he does a lot of videos where he talks about football.
Like the women who wanted to marry Richard Ramirez, that kind of follow.
If you want a real treat, OJ has hidden the comments that people leave on his videos, but you want to go ahead and turn those back on, and you'll see. But also because he's been speaking about football the last few years, every week he's a contributor to a video podcast by two rappers, Cameron and Mace, I think is his name. And every Tuesday they talk to him about football. And you have to really listen closely, but those guys might make jokes about like, that's a killer point, OJ. Every once in a while, you got to sneak it in.
Too soon.
He's there every week, and it's just like, oh, this isn't abnormal to you guys. And the one host was asked in an interview, why do you have OJ on? He's like, oh, because I know he's innocent. So if I thought he was guilty, I wouldn't have him on. I'm like, all right, that's an answer. But that circles back to what we were talking about before. And I wanted to know, Jim and Royal, both of you, what you guys think. How differently would that case have gone even 10 years later, much less 30 years later today, from one, possibly the verdict, but also just the way you litigate it? People understand forensics a lot better than they did in 1994, 1995. But Jim, do you think that maybe you don't need to spend like a month on it, and you're like, yeah, maybe you spend an afternoon, and like, this is what the forensics tells us?
Well, I think the attention span is much shorter today. That case went on for about 9 months.
Right.
And in all honesty, I look at that case as the first reality show. During the trial was on live from 9 to 4 Pacific time. And soap operas were really on. They were big at that point. Nobody was watching soap operas. They would rerun them at 2 and 3 in the morning because nobody was interested, and it killed the soap opera for a while. It became a real life soap opera. It became a drama. There was sex, there was drugs, there was murder, there was this, there was intrigue. So I think that case today wouldn't take 9 months. It would probably take 1, 2, or 3. Would it be a different result? I think people are more cynical today, and they're more prone to believing conspiracy theories, and they're more prone to believing outlandish explanations for things. So I don't know if it would be a different result. I think the judge, a judge today might be more savvy about what he or she would allow in terms of evidence to be admitted. I think that when the judge allowed for the jury to go to OJ's house on a field trip,
allowing Johnny Carson to change the pictures on the wall.
All the photos were changed. You know, it was like a movie set. I'm telling you, this was a reality show. So I don't know. You could, if I sound cynical, maybe I am cynical.
So my take would be what he said.
Right, or what he said. Yeah. Do you think that it was a mistake to leave the cameras on? Obviously, you spent.
No, I don't. I don't think. I do not think it was.
No,
I don't think it was.
No mistake.
I don't think it was a mistake.
Okay.
Actually, I really don't. I think that we have a right and a need to see what's going on in a courtroom, especially if you're alleging racism, especially if you're alleging things that are. I'm glad that there were cameras in the courtroom. Clearly, they played for those cameras. The moment putting on the glove, that was another stupid move by the prosecution to allow O.J. Simpson to put a glove on.
Well, let's narrow it down. Chris Darden called an audible.
Well,
apparently, they had a meeting, decided not to do it. But during the heat of battle, he said, "Yep, gonna do it."
Yes.
Yeah. So.
But this is how television influenced coverage. I was a guest often on Larry King's show, and I often filled in for him. And prior to one show where I was a guest, I told Larry that I had been at the dance recital the day of the murders because both OJ's daughter and my daughter were in the same school. And I also told him that I had size 12 Bruno Magli shoes. So the guest at the time was a law professor, and Larry King says, "Professor, what is the significance of size 12 Bruno Magli?" Well, the professor says that it's a very specific shoe and a very specific size, so it narrows down the universe. What about, he says, wait till you hear Moret's answer. And then, Jim Moret, where were you that day? Larry, I was at the recital. Marsha Clark, if you're watching, we have Jim Moret, who size 12 Bruno Magli shoes, and was at the recital. And then after the show, I said, Larry, I'm anchoring the coverage. Why did you bring this up? And he goes, great show.
Yeah.
and so
love it.
that really, that was, but
He was an
everybody,
entertainer.
people, I couldn't go anywhere without people asking me. Our kids went to a school, and one of the parents there, Mark Hamill, who's in Star Wars, was the biggest OJ addict I've ever seen. I couldn't go anywhere where Mark was without Mark saying, Jim, what do you think about it? He would go over every single bit of evidence. Everybody was an armchair expert because everybody watched constantly, and everyone had an opinion. It was fascinating, and it really was a national obsession.
So the power of TV is just so amazing. Before that, of course, there was the Rodney King cop trial.
Right.
And I knew Ira Salzman a little bit. He was one of the lawyers. I think he represented Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, one of the cops. So I invited him to an Angels game. And I'm telling you, from the time we left the car to the time we got to our seats, it was like going to the ball game with Paul Newman. They were pointing, they were waving, they were shaking his hands. And this is Ira Salzman, okay? So he's not exactly a household name. But on the camera thing, I mean, full disclosure, I'm biased. I'm general counsel of the Radio and TV News Association. And for years, including during the OJ trial, I've gone in arguing for cameras. So, the stations want it. I think it's a good idea because sunlight is the best disinfectant. People behave better when folks are watching them. I know, having tried a bunch of cases, lawyers behave better, judges, and people worry, the witnesses will be afraid, they won't show up. They have to show up because they're subpoenaed. And I'm telling you, I'm sure you've had the same experience. You're in a courtroom. After a couple of minutes, nobody remembers. It's not like it's like the Lindbergh baby with some movie camera.
Although I think in the OJ trial, those lawyers were very cognizant of those cameras.
Well, certainly they played to the camera, and the solution to that was Judge Ito slapping him down, and he didn't want to do that. He used to work for Johnny Cochran, and
But Judge Ito played to the cameras as well, and I respect Judge Ito a great deal. I really do. I think it was a very difficult job.
Very tough.
But he also one day had on his desk box after box after box of letters complaining about the coverage, and there was only one reason to show them, and that was for the cameras themselves. See, so I mean, I think we all fall victim to that.
Yep. Before we get to more on your backstory, I have to say thank you for coming in, Jim, because you told me you were on a shoot out in Malibu. And
I was.
After the shoot, you could have gone to Gladstone's and had a martini with Diane Cannon, but you didn't. You slogged your way across the freeway. So.
No, Diane is going to meet me for dinner.
Oh, well, then it worked out.
It's fine.
No problem. All right, so let's get back to the situation you were at Fox. Now, how did you end up moving over from Fox News to CNN, where you started senior entertainment correspondent? Within a year, you're anchoring the daily entertainment show, Showbiz Today, and then you were the chief anchor, and you co-anchored The World Today. How did all that happen?
Well, it wasn't Fox News. Fox News didn't exist at that point.
Oh,
it was
Rupert.
It was 20th Television,
okay,
a syndicated arm of Fox Network at that time, which was still a young network.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a show that initially was called Personalities. And, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out. Oh, Charlie Rose was the anchor.
Ah, okay.
I was blanking out because
Very inexpensive black background.
Yes, yeah. And Charlie left mid-season, which you don't do on a syndicated show. And
sexual harassment allegations?
No.
This is long before the sexual harassment allegation.
No, it was he for whatever reason he decided not to continue, and they changed the show from a news magazine to an entertainment show, a daily entertainment show to compete with ET. And I was the chief correspondent for that show, and they made me a co-anchor of the show. So and then from there, that show only lasted a season, and I was fortunate enough to get a job at CNN, which was still a young network at the time too.
So you were at CNN from 92 to 99, and according to The Last Day of My Life,
wait,
your book?
Yes. Wait. I was at CNN from 91 to 2001, about 10 years.
I was just testing to make sure you had the timeline right.
I can't remember.
And you passed. So as you recite in your memoir,
yes.
They're telling you, CNN saying, we're scaling back in the LA office. We want you to move to Atlanta. We're offering you a big anchor job.
Right.
Tell us your situation. Why didn't you just jump at it and move? Give us a little preview of The Last Day of My Life.
Well, I mean, I did not. What the preview of last? You mean how did I get to write the book? The book was really it's an experience I had that I think many people have, and that is getting to a point in your life where you feel like you're valueless, you're worth more dead than alive. In my case, I was facing financial situations that were gloomy. This was after I left CNN, when I decided not to move to Atlanta. And I decided not to move because of my family. They were all based here. Grandparents were here, aunts and uncles here, and I did that for my kids. But it was very difficult after I left CNN. Before CNN and after CNN and before Inside Edition, there was a couple of years that I didn't work. And it was really difficult emotionally and psychologically and financially. And I got to a point where I thought about ending my life. And the premise of the book was, what if I had one day left? How would I spend it? And it's not a bucket list because you can only do so much in one day, but it's about re-examining your life and looking at the relationships that you have, about the people that are important to you, about the things you've done and the things that you would like to do, and saying thank you and saying I'm sorry and all of that.
So to me, it's amazing when a person has the courage to put pen to paper and tell the story. Because let's face it, we all have stories, the imposter syndrome, I don't belong
You have
there.
that. You have imposter syndrome.
But I knew from day one.
I never know who I'm talking to.
But the last thing most people want is
so glad Christian's here. He laughs at these things. It's so good to have an audience because you never laugh, Royal.
Well, I
Christian is my new
occasionally,
friend.
I chortle somewhat. But I mean, was it a tough decision? Because like I was saying, how many people are willing to tell their story and, the low point of their life, and yet you were prepared to do it, and then you went on a lot of shows talking about
I did it because, I did it for me initially. I wrote the first chapter. I showed it to my wife. She cried and didn't realize the depths of my depression and said, keep writing. I want you to keep doing it. This is good for you. I want you to keep going. I love you. I support you. And the more I wrote, the more she said, keep going, and share this with others. And she gave me permission to write the most intimate things about us. And I
was courageous of her too.
I give her
it was your story, but it was hers as well.
And it was loving, and it was very supportive. And thanks to her, we're about to celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary in a month or so.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. She told me it's the last one. Thank you, Christian.
Well, at least you didn't say, I've had 20 years of happy marriage. We've been married 42 years. Old bad joke. So I want to talk a little bit about some of your interviews. George Michael comes to mind. He was arrested back in 1998 for lewd conduct in a bathroom, and you got the interview, and you showed a lot of compassion. Tell us about that.
That's of all the interviews I did in my career, that's one I'm most proud of. George Michael, it was between CNN, our show on CNN, and Dateline with Maria Shriver, getting the interview with George Michael, the first interview after his arrest.
Wow.
And what it came down to was we agreed to air it unedited on Saturday. On a Saturday, they were not going to air until I think Monday or Tuesday.
And that really appealed to him.
And George Michael knew, or was tipped off, that the tabloids in England were going to out him as gay. I didn't know this at the time. So he showed up at our offices, and this is one of the biggest stars in the world at the time, huge star. He showed up alone. No entourage, no handler, no attorney, no agent, no publicist, just George Michael. And he could not have looked more nervous. I spent an hour with him in the green room, just talking to him so he would feel comfortable. We went out on the set. He was so nervous, I stopped the interview and I said, I agreed to air this thing live. I'm not going to air this part. Let's go back in the green room, talk a bit more, then we'll come out again and have the interview.
Wow.
And then during that interview, all he wanted to do, I didn't know this obviously ahead of time, but all he wanted to do was say, I did this. I'm sorry to my fans. I'm gay. And he wanted people to know that the songs that he had written about women that in the past were about women, that he wasn't being disloyal, he wasn't being dishonest. He had just discovered who he was, and he wanted to be his authentic self. And I have to tell you, he was a decent, nice, gentle, talented man who I think was tortured and I don't know that he ever found happiness, but I really liked him after meeting him, and I respected the fact that he had, talk about courage to go on the air live. And granted, he had faced some legal problems, right? And he was embarrassed publicly, but he didn't have to come on the air. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to be honest and open. He could have denied things, and I think many people would have, but he didn't do that. And I was so proud of that interview. And years later, Elton John and I became friendly, and he said that interview meant so much to George, and he shared that with Elton, and he in turn shared that with me, and I'm so proud of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I want to ask you about another interview, and that's of Stormy Daniels.
Yes.
I saw you interview
I love
her
Stormy Daniels.
a couple of years ago, and I have to say, I think she likes you.
She liked me.
She
said she liked me.
was a little sweet on you. Yeah,
called
I don't
me-
think she does that to everybody.
I think she called me pretty.
Yeah, Stormy Daniels was definitely a fan.
I'm blushing now. Just
We've
thinking
only got a
about
few
it.
seconds, but
Yeah.
tell us about the Stormy encounter.
She at this time she was not talking, so she was. I did an hour-long sit-down interview with her, and she wouldn't say anything, and yet it was one of my favorite interviews ever.
Fantastic. Hey, here's the deal. This show is a radio program, and it's syndicated around the country.
This is radio?
We've come to the end of it, but the podcast version of this is going to continue. So if you're listening on the podcast, stick with it. Welcome back. This is Too Many Lawyers, the special edition. Royal Oaks Talks Law with Jim Moret and our executive producer, Christian Bladt. And if you're listening to this, it's because you're listening to the podcast. If you listen to the radio version, doggone it, you're not listening to this premium content. But here comes the premium content. I promised you guys we're going to play some games. Are you ready for this?
What do you charge for the podcast?
What do I charge?
Yes.
Oh, we pay you scale.
So no. So you get what you pay for on the premium content. I'm just telling you right now.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay. As of now, it's
premium
it's for
is
free.
a euphemism for
After this show, there's going to be a tab. Okay. So the first game is my absolute favorites. I think you can tell a lot about somebody by their favorite things: movies, TV shows, songs. And so if you're right, if you agree with me, then you'll win a major award.
Okay.
Movies.
Favorite movies?
Favorite movies, yeah, 2 or 3, your favorite movies, whichever one of you wants to go first. If you want a time to pause, Kevin Horton, our intrepid engineer, will just edit out the 8 minutes that you paused. You want to go first? You must have a favorite movie.
I have a couple of favorites
Okay,
that
right
will
on.
not be on your list because you're going to say Godfather. And I would
No,
agree
that's
that
not on my list.
It's
Not on my list.
Godfather's
Not on my list.
How could Godfather
Well,
not be on your
Godfather 3 is on
We're
his
talking.
list.
Yeah,
We're talking. I've got 3 on my list.
Godfather's
Top
not
3.
on the top
No.
3.
No.
Really? I'll tell you a couple on my list that you will never believe.
Really?
Yes. Hard Day's Night
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
and Willy Wonka.
Oh, the new one?
No. Gene Wilder.
It's the Gene Wilder version. I saw the new one. I liked
The
it.
new one is great.
Yeah.
I was really it was really good,
I was surprised. Yeah, I thought it would be a
Yes.
pale impersonation.
but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a reinvention.
All right. Well, those are good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. How about you, Christian?
Well, I'll just have to lean on my childhood, so I would have to say that probably Star Wars was the most important movie I ever saw because I was 1 when it came out. I remember
Is that true? You were 1?
Yeah. I remember being at the drive-in for the re-release. I remember seeing that as a movie, and my dad had to take me to the bathroom, and he'd seen the movie already, but he really didn't want to take me. So I remember how mad it made my dad. And then I think I in college came to really appreciate that. It's like, I see why everybody says Citizen Kane is one of the greatest films ever made. What's lost on I think a lot of people is it's actually very funny in places. The humor
Well, I'll have to
is
watch
lost
it
on a
again. I
lot
haven't
of
seen it
people.
for years. I didn't
And,
remember it was funny.
Probably the movie I've watched the most is Airplane.
Oh, okay. Well, guys, I have to say, those were good guesses, but I'm sorry. The 3 best movies: Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Dr. Strangelove, and Sunset Boulevard.
Okay. Okay. Well, Dr. Strangelove, a brilliant movie.
Oh my gosh.
Another film by Kubrick is 2001, which if you watch it again, looks like a current film.
Really?
Look. Yes.
Wow, that's quite a testament.
It is a
because when it came 70 or 71, that's 50
68.
years ago. 68, yeah, even worse.
Yeah. But Dr. Strangelove, terrific.
Incredible.
Terrific.
But
and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you have that poster in your home.
Yes, I do. I'm obsessed with it.
I've seen it.
I love the film.
That's in the Royal Oaks inner sanctum.
I've never been there. By the way, my favorite.
That's because you're only his executive producer.
My favorite Stanley Kubrick movie is the one where they pretended we landed on the moon. No, it's just a joke.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Supposedly, he's the one who made that.
I didn't see that movie.
No,
what movie was that?
So maybe you guys, since you're very techie, you can help me out. We're trying to put something up on Instagram. I've been bloviating about the Donald Trump criminal trials, and my point is the 4 criminal trials are just like the movies Failsafe and Dr. Strangelove, because as in those 2 movies, you've got bombers going from Moscow, and you're trying to call them back, and if just one bomber gets through, boom, apocalypse, everybody's died.
Right.
Dead. I see the criminal trials that way. Some people say, well, Donald Trump's convicted and Stormy Daniels, no big deal. I think one conviction knocks him out because enough independents who are critical to Trump beating Biden are going to say, are you kidding me? A convicted felon is going to prison and you want me to vote for him? So I see Stormy, she's coming up, her trial's starting. And what I want to do is get a video of Slim Pickens riding the bomb and superimpose Stormy waving the hat just like Slim, because when she gets through, as she will, because the judge doesn't like Trump, and he's going to stick to March 25 as a date, I think she's going to torpedo Donald Trump's presidential ambitions. You guys agree with me or disagree?
Well, it's so funny. I've actually seen video of Stormy Daniels with a cowboy hat, but I don't think you can use it for the thing you're talking about.
I like it. This is a different hat. Slim Pickens, he's from Texas.
I don't know.
Think I'm full of crap, don't you, Jim?
No, I don't. Well, yes, but that has nothing to do with this game.
Okay.
I don't know that it's going to torpedo Trump.
Okay, maybe.
I think that there are plenty of women who have been the victims of sexual assault who are supporting Donald Trump. So
now you may be right. All right, let's go to question number 2. Favorite songs. Favorite songs. Wow. Yeah. Any come to mind?
Here Come the Sun.
Oh, George Harrison?
The Sun, yeah.
Oh, I love that. That is almost in my top.
Almost any
5.
Beatles song, to be quite honest with you.
No,
I love the Beatles.
Even
incredible.
Cold Turkey?
No. Okay. Well, certain. No,
How about you, Kristen? Favorite songs come to mind?
Gosh.
Help Me, Rhonda?
It's funny that you mentioned the Beach Boys, though. I once heard a quote from Paul McCartney that God Only Knows by the Beach Boys is the perfect pop song.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
It is
Sir
a great
Paul says
song.
it. It's true, but he's also correct.
And a complicated song.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that entire Pet Sounds album. It's like not what people were expecting from the Beach Boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, nice try, guys.
Wait a minute.
No, I'm
How
sorry
about I
you're
Will
wrong.
by the Beatles?
Oh, yeah, that's good, too. That's okay. No, the best songs of all time, American Tune by Paul Simon. Hasn't even heard of it, Christian. He hasn't heard that.
I like Kodachrome.
I was literally about to say, what about Kodachrome?
Yeah, because that's a better song.
Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. I mean, what could be better?
Really?
He's going for the young demo. This is on YouTube now.
Yeah.
So
He read it was a young demo.
Amarillo by Morning by George Strait.
Okay.
okay.
And I'm Just Ken by Ryan Gosling from Barbie. Why are we laughing?
It didn't even win an Oscar.
Those aren't. That's not.
He knocked it out of the park at the Oscars.
He did knock it out of the park.
It's fantastic.
He did knock it out of the park.
Fabulous.
But those are not your top
you guys,
songs.
you
Those
guys
are not your top
there's
songs.
no way Shake It Off
There's
is your
no
top
way
song.
those are your top songs.
Yeah, you guys aren't doing too well.
Well, what's your What's your favorite album?
Oh, great question.
Revolver.
That's a great album.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That's not my favorite album is Abbey Road, Beatles album. What about Asia by Steely Dan?
I'm not really a big Steely Dan fan. I probably
because you're
should.
not you don't have that complex jazz orientation.
It's just that I heard what Steely Dan really means, and I just I wasn't comfortable with it.
What is it really? What is
Well,
it mean?
I can't tell you on YouTube.
Does it mean the same thing as Limp Bizkit?
Something like that.
Oh, okay. Then I don't want to know.
All right, next question. TV shows. Most wonderful, fabulous TV shows of all time. If you had to just pick 3, you were on a desert island with a VHS machine and
Obviously,
and Betamax
Gilligan's
tape.
Island, My Mother, the Car, and Petticoat Junction.
Jerry Van Dyke fan,
Those are
huh?
great. Those are
That
great
Edgar
shows.
Buchanan and B. Benaderet, I'm telling you. Now, you worked with Dennis Miller for
did,
many years,
many
and that's
years.
why you're saying these things, because Dennis taught you about the 60s references.
No, I knew about My Mother, the Car.
My Mother, the Car is a great show.
Yeah.
When Dennis would come up with a Fred Ziffel reference, I couldn't stop laughing.
I think Seinfeld is a great show.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
I think
Doesn't make the top 3.
every night I watch Everybody Loves Raymond. I don't know why.
He
We watch it.
Not a good golfer, but a
he
great
never.
comedian.
Yes, but you never see him golf on the show. There's only one episode where he golfs, and his wife does better.
Well, there was like Charles Barkley had a TV show, him trying to get
also
better
a bad
at golf.
golfer. Yeah.
Yeah. Same deal with everybody.
Well, what are
loves.
your 3? Let's
Oh,
ridicule
so we're ready
you.
for mine?
Yes.
I feel so bad because you guys, didn't give right answers again. Mad Men, Twilight Zone, and The Fugitive. 1967 version with David Jansen. In other words,
Twilight
not the
Zone
movie.
is a
Talking
great
TV.
show. I watch it every time it's on during the marathon on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
They're incredible, yeah.
It's
Outer Limits was really great too.
But not in Twilight Zone's league.
It was pretty scary.
You're right, it was scary.
Twilight Zone did the same thing that Star Trek did in the sense of like we're telling these really sophisticated and somewhat controversial for the time period stories, but we're using fantasy,
Right.
so you don't
Well,
really
and
think
they were
about it.
allegories.
Yeah.
Sense,
And
right?
but yeah, some of those Twilight Zones. I mean, it's the obvious. People talk about the Burgess Meredith "Time Enough at Last."
Yes.
I remember seeing that as a kid. I was used to everything had a happy ending. Oh my God, he's finally got time to read all the books.
No happy ending there.
The poor son of a bitch breaks his glasses.
So what's your favorite Twilight Zone episode?
Well, as a matter of fact, Willoughby.
Willoughby. That's where he goes back to that.
Yes. The Tranquil Time. This was Tyne Daly's brother or father.
Wrong.
Oh. His last name was Daly. John Daly, James Daly.
That's still wrong.
He was the star, and
Yes.
he was a harried businessman.
Yes,
push,
yes,
push, push.
yes.
And
And he's on the train.
He's on the train,
Right.
and he jumped off to the train to his
Yes,
demise.
but
So
that's not the best episode.
well, the
Everybody
other two
knows
I
that.
like are Time Enough at Last,
Okay, also
that
wrong.
you mentioned, Christian, and
did.
Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner.
That was good too,
The
but
great
still
William
wrong.
Shatner.
Well, you tell us. Correct me
The
then.
plastic surgery.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
with Donna Douglas from the
Yes.
Beverly Hillbillies.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
That was a great one.
That's fantastic.
That was the one.
Well, you guys did pretty well there at that game. So our
You did fair.
final game it's the either or game. I'm going to give you 2
I'll go
things.
with either.
Well, you're going to have to pick.
I'm an or guy, so this
Okay.
works.
First choice: Roger Maris or Mickey Mantle.
Oh my God.
Pretty tough choice, huh?
me two
Roger was
Yankees.
so anxious;
Do we
his
have to
hair
have
fell
a-
out during the run for the home run
It was
race.
Mickey Mantle's body of work and also his stories about what he did,
His body of work
pre-game.
included somebody else's liver.
Well, yeah, that part's true, but I think his entire career on and off the field more interesting than Roger Maris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I'll go with that.
Okay, I
Mickey
agree.
Mantle.
I agree with you.
Mickey Mantle, Mickey Mantle.
Next, Twisted Sister or Barry White. You both said "wow" at the same time. What did you get together before the show?
Different genres. It's like saying
It's Twisted Sister for me.
It's like
'cause
saying, who do
there
you
I
like?
grew up when they were on MTV all the time.
ay ay ay.
Barry
White's very
White was the
talented.
Walrus of Love.
Yes, he was.
I was more of a Teddy Pendergrass guy.
I think Barry White had a bigger influence on more people.
I think you're right. But whose song would cost more to put in a commercial right now?
Twisted
That's-
Sister.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good point.
next, vodka martini or gin martini.
Vodka.
Definitely vodka.
Yeah, me too. Everybody isn't James Bond. He was a gin guy, but
But
nobody I
there's
talk
no
to likes
right
gin.
answer to that. That's just
Oh, I think there is vodka. When I was in high school, I had never had a drink because my parents were teetotalers, and
that's
so,
why you went off the wagon.
So I go to UCLA, and I go to a party, and the people who are throwing the party was the debate team. We'd just done horribly as usual at a tournament, so you
You were
party
in the
afterwards.
debate team in college,
Oh yeah,
which is why you didn't date much.
big
in college.
nerd, big nerd. And so I get horribly drunk because they thought it was fun to feed drinks to the guy who's never
Sure.
been drunk before. And I had a great night for 2 or 3 hours. Oh my gosh,
Was that gin?
a gin.
Yeah.
Oh.
That put me out. Yeah, and I haven't.
That's
haven't
why I never
enjoyed it
smoked. Because
Really?
when I was a kid, my mom smoked cigarettes.
Okay.
And I said, I was 6, and I thought, I'd like to smoke. And so my dad said, hey, here, have a cigarette. So gave me a cigarette, and I smoked. And he said, no, inhale. Really
Yeah.
good. And by the time I got to the second cigarette, I was sick for the entire day, or probably the whole weekend. I've never touched a cigarette.
So you know
Quite a
that
gift she gave you.
Quite a
you know that parenting technique is straight from the playbook of Donald Duck, who
Is that true?
Yes, he found
Really?
Huey, Dewey, and Louie with a box of cigars. Now they
Did
got the
not
box
know
of
that.
cigars to buy them for
thought
their
my
Uncle
parents
Donald.
were so-
And did Uncle
And-
Scrooge
and
suggest this
Uncle
to Donald?
Scrooge isn't in that one.
Oh, okay.
And he makes them smoke the entire box of cigars. And then at the bottom of the box
Cubano?
it says, "Happy birthday, Uncle Donald."
Oh, that's so funny.
I love it. Okay, last question. Skeptic or open to the paranormal? A lot of people believe in ESP, beings from another. If you look at surveys, like 40% of Americans think there are angels, that we've visitors from other planets. They believe in ESP. So are you in the skeptic bucket, or are you in the, there might be something to all this stuff?
I'm open to the paranormal.
Okay.
I'm open to it. I think that
Good experiences?
I feel.
Yes.
Ooh.
No.
I think that a being from another planet makes a lot more sense than ghosts. I don't know
Yes.
if you can convince me that ghosts are real, but I could be convinced that they're
But I
According to
want
Whoopi
to-
Goldberg, They're there.
I want to believe that there's more after we're gone.
I agree. Yeah.
That's all. And it's not because
well, of course,
I
that's
do
more
believe
of a religious
but-
issue as
No,
opposed
no,
to a
no, no.
paranormal issue?
No, well, it's not a spiritual thing.
No?
It's more of a I just want to believe.
But there will be more after you're gone, Jim, because you wrote that book, and that book will live
Oh.
on.
And reruns of Inside Edition.
That doesn't really.
really
One thing I learned is there's no residuals in news.
Yeah,
Bad career move.
By the way, did they have somebody play you in the People versus O.J. Simpson, or did they just make up?
Made up
anchors?
yes.
Okay, because I don't remember. It was a few years ago. It's not like I remembered. I was just curious if
no,
they.
had somebody just
It's
anchors.
funny you mentioned that because I was going to ask Jim a question, and now I'm going to ask him during the show here. I need your advice.
Yes.
Because you've been in a bunch of movies and TV shows where you portray a newsman and so
Yes.
on. So my friend Billy Reback is written a screenplay called Spaceman from Planet Judy with Steve Rubin and some other guys. And I've been asked to play a news guy.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I've got flop sweat just thinking about it because how am I going to live up to the gold standard of Jim Moret, an actual newsman playing?
Interesting story.
So how should I approach this?
Well,
should I
will
talk to
just-
Stella Adler?
Yes.
What's the deal?
I will tell you this.
Yeah.
That when The West Wing was on, I went to an audition because they were looking for a CNN anchor. And I was the only CNN anchor there who was applying for this.
Wow.
And I read for it, and they said, "You're not right for the part." And I remember driving home from Burbank, talking to my wife on the phone, so dejected, thinking, maybe I've chosen the wrong career. I don't how is this possible?
Yeah.
A couple of months go by, and I see one of the executive producers at a party. And I did what I never do, and I walked up to him and I said, Tommy Shalami is his name. What happened? And I just need to know. And he said, that was my fault because we had a rule that after a certain administration, we couldn't use real presidents' names, and you were a CNN anchor, so we couldn't use you because you, in fact, were what we were portraying. So he wrote a generic anchor spot, and they used me for 2 or 3 more episodes, which I thought was really classy.
Yeah.
But for you, I would say, don't do it.
Well, the thing is, I have offered them more and more money, and so now we came to an agreement. They've got a figure that I'm going to pay.
Is
them.
that true that they are asking you to do that?
Yes, absolutely. They're
That-
actually doing a reading. It's going to start out as podcast, and then they're
Just
they're
be
gonna try
you. Just be natural.
that hasn't worked in the past.
You're right.
So it's funny you mentioned Larry King, though. Let me share one more story about the OJ days. I was doing a bunch of CNN commentary in the early 90s and late 80s. And so I was actually in the green room, ready to talk to Larry King when the low-speed chase broke out. And when the low-speed chase happened, there were a couple of us who were brought in for like 30 seconds, and then boom. Because remember, it was the same night as like the NBA Finals.
Finals,
Yeah. So that was my moment of glory to get about 30 seconds with Larry. Because there were
you
bigger.
on with him after that?
No. They told me some guy at CNN kind of blackballed me. His name was Jim Moret.
Yeah,
Jim
yeah.
Corret, or it rhymed with that.
yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know what happened, Jim. Maybe you
I
know
don't-
because
I
you
don't
were
know.
an
No,
insider.
I'm as shocked as you are.
There's a
just
phenomenal ESPN 30 for 30. I think that day is June 17th, 1994. and it's about that part
Wow.
where you have split screen on NBC of the slow speed chase and the NBA Finals that's in the small box, but also just all the other things like Arnold Palmer or somebody. It was like their last. Maybe I got the golfer wrong, but
David Hasselhoff had a pay-per-view special
That's right.
as counter-programming
Yeah.
for sports, and because of that slow-speed chase, it was the lowest-rated pay-per-view special ever.
Oh my God!
And David Hasselhoff at the time was huge, as we all know, in Germany.
yeah,
right?
Germans
And-
love David Hasselhoff. As my
but
buddy
he had-
Norm
he had-
McDonald used
he
to
had a
always
good
say,
career. He
Because
has.
they loved Hitler too.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Thanks
Thanks for
I
bringing
want to
us
compare
down.
those two, but
One
of them talked to a car, right? But yeah, no, I know the idea that was Hasselhoff's great big, opportunity. There was
What
this
a
big
shame.
night,
I know.
and but so other people built careers off that day.
Yep. There you go. Hey, guys, this has been so much fun. Thank you, Jim, for coming in and making the inaugural version show of
really
Royal
honored.
Oaks Talks Law with ... And you're the very first triple dot guy. Christian, executive producer, thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely happy to be here. And my podcast, it's spelled Blattcast, BLADTCAST.
Oh, that's right. That's got to be a problem. A lot of people probably misspell it.
Well, the D,
ridiculously.
the D really throws it off. It's the Danish spelling. And for our YouTube friends, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, I'm one of the co-hosts of a show called Who Are These Broadcasters? It is on the Who Are These Podcasts Network. Check that out. We have fun over there.
Perfect. And Inside Edition in Los Angeles every night, Channel 2, 7 p.m., and all around the country.
When I say all the affiliates, what channel and what time it's on.
Just
on,
go to
we got that.
InsideEdition.com,
Oh, that's better.
and your
Yeah.
local station
Yeah.
will be listed.
That's better.
Yeah, and so the deal is, so I'm a legal analyst for Channel 4, and
Are you really?
They have a 7 o'clock show now, Jim, and so
Are you
occasionally-
under contract to them?
Well, I was on with Carolyn Johnson last night at 7 o'clock.
Does that mean
show.
we can't talk to you on Inside Edition anymore?
No, it's possible, but here's the deal.
Wait.
I-
You're
I'm
just
gonna
breaking
compare-
that to me now?
I'm gonna compare the 5 million you get, and I'm not gonna rest until Channel 4 has 5 million at 7
They
o'clock.
may
as
have
well.
5 million over a year.
Well, Inside Edition is national. Channel 4 is laser focused on the City of the Angels.
Am I not allowed to talk to you anymore?
Oh, sure, we can talk anytime.
Right now.
Yeah,
But this is it after
right,
this.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm very
He's gonna
upset.
block you.
I would have
Oh.
said no to this thing.
So thank you guys, and we'll see you on Inside Edition. We'll see you next time, Christian Bladt. See you later.